Hello. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get the webinar started. So thank you for joining us. We'll go ahead and this will take about an hour. If you guys have more questions at the end, I'll stick around to answer any questions you have. But plan on about an hour. I got a lot of information and it'll come at you fast. So if you want to, just put your questions in the chat and I'll go ahead and get to them at the end of the presentation. So to start off, can I really cease my lease? Is that possible? So that's what the webinar is going to be about today. My name's Albie. Sometimes Jason does this class, but I'm the National Program Director and with TrueView Lending. And this is kind of a passion of mine to help renters become homeowners. So on today's agenda, we're going to talk about the challenges that today's home buyers face. We're going to talk about making the home buying experience simple and exciting. And, the rates are higher. So some people are questioning, should I wait? Should I buy now? So we'll talk about that. And we've got a program where if you're doing your loan with us, you can be a cash buyer in the marketplace. And I'll tell you a little bit about how that works, if it's beneficial for you to use that program. And then we're going to talk about the journey of home ownership and some of the things you're going to negotiate on the contract. And then the partnership between TrueView Lending, who I work for, and CeaseMyLease. And then the next steps with connecting with your loan officer, your program specialist. So why would you want to cease your lease? So there's a lot of reasons why people say, tired of renting means a lot of different things to a lot of different folks. So we kind of took the top ideas of what people had for reasons for wanting to own their own home and kind of compiled them here. And this is what most people say. So a bigger yard, that came in a lot. And that wasn't just a bigger yard. Sometimes it was a yard, like if they had a dog or maybe a certain dog that it's hard to be able to rent with, to be able to have a place there. Some people wanted a backyard for their kiddos. And so they kind of had that, that safe spot where they didn't have to maybe go down to a park, but they could actually have an area in their backyard. Some people just wanted to like do social events and have their own area to do that and, create a cool barbecue area or swimming pool or, trampolines, that kind of thing. And so a yard was a big thing that people wanted. And a safe neighborhood, that one came in a lot also. That's something that, depending on where you're living and just having that safety. So if your home's in a safe space or your valuables or your family, but a lot of that safe neighborhood was a big topic. Close to family, that was something that people want to make sure that they sometimes we'd see far away from family. So, depending on dynamics there. No rent increases. That's a big one. Because when you're paying rent, it's almost like an adjustable rate mortgage. You don't know if it's going to go up or not next year. And so your landlord sometimes surprises you. Maybe it's only $50, but sometimes we've heard of rent increases like over $200 going up in a year. And that's tough to budget for. And, when you own your home, you kind of lock in payment for the next 30 years. So it really allows you to budget and kind of figure things out and just have that you don't equity and use it as a financial vehicle. And when they're paying that monthly payment, they wanted to pay it into their own pocket versus paying it into a landlord's pocket. And plant a tree that'll be yours. If you're renting a place and you're like, gosh, it'd be really nice to have shade out here, kind of a cool environment, but gosh, I go to my landlord. My landlord would get the benefit of that, not me. I want to do some stuff here, maybe build a patio or, so like when you own your own place, you get to, create that environment and you benefit from it, versus your landlord. And a place to call home, settle and build a family. A lot of people talk about when they look at pictures of like a photo album, a lot of that's centered around the home, and you see, the kids at the tree and how big they grew, or by the door, and different family events in that kitchen, and cooking and cookies and different life events, and it's all kind of centered around that home environment. So it's kind of a neat place to create those memories. Some people, to paint and personalize your home without permission. A lot of times, if you want to paint a kiddo's room or something like that, got to get permission from the landlord. Sometimes they approve it, sometimes they don't. A lot of times you got to paint it back when you leave, that kind of thing. So just having the flexibility to do your own thing. And then the big one we touched on a little bit is pay yourself versus your landlord, because somebody's getting the benefit of that monthly mortgage being paid. And so it could be you, or it could be your landlord, and your landlord doesn't want you to leave. So they'd like you to keep making the payment for them. But, if you were to cease your lease, this is a chart here from First American, and it shows the net worth of homeowners versus renters and different income levels. So if you're, somewhere around that 50 to 75,000 income level, the people that own homes have about $180,000 more net worth than the folks that just under 200,000 goes up. And, if you're making over 200,000 a year, pretty significant difference on the net worth that you have when you own a home versus rent a home. And so if you're thinking like, why is that? Well, why would, just because you own a home? Well, the thing is, when you own that home, every time you make that payment, so if you make a rent payment or you make a mortgage payment, it's somebody's pocket that benefit's going into. And so if you own a home, you're actually paying down your mortgage every month. So that goes down lower and lower and lower till 30 years, it's gone, it's zero. And then all you pay is taxes and insurance. But every month when you make that payment, it's like a forced savings because that money's, paying down your loan. But the other thing is every month your house is appreciating. The value of your home is increasing and you're paying down. So it's not just a one-sided equation. Both sides, that's what makes up the equity in the home. And that equity is yours if you're a homeowner, or it's your landlord's if you're a renter. And so again, that's why your landlord doesn't want you to leave, because you're paying down their property and their property is appreciating by you living in it and you taking care of it and you making the payments. It's not vacant. Somebody is getting access to it. And so you living there actually is really helping that landlord. You're getting $100 for every month you paid your rent on time, or you get $1,200 from this program. And if you're buying a $400,000 property, you're getting $250 for every month you paid your rent on time for the last 12 months, up to $3,000. So that's only part of it. So our agents are really good at getting seller concessions. And right now you can get seller concessions. And I'll show you that here in a minute, what the seller concessions can do. And then I'll show you how to calculate that on the website. So you can kind of play around with it for your specific scenario. So, people ask, why are we getting some of our reimbursed? Why is it happening when I go with this program, CeaseMyLease? So get into good rental properties. And then after they rented for a while, it was her passion to help them become homeowners. And then so she kind of created a program where if she helped them rent, she would actually give them 20% of her commission when they went to buy their house. So she would help them. It'd be a reduced amount now to buy the house. She would help pay for closing costs. And that would help people transition from renting into home ownership. And she wasn't really concerned that she got a reduced commission because she knew that they were probably going to be clients for life. So this would be their first home. But then after they kind of figured out how many bedrooms they need and big backyard, small backyard location, they would often buy their next home. And so the next home, so she would get both of those commissions. She would also help them sell their house. So it was a really good program to help them become a homeowner because it created future business for her. And it turned out to be a great business model. And it was really successful. And she started helping a lot of folks. And then what happened is some of the folks would say, hey, can we do this program? But we're actually moving out of state because, my spouse's job is taking us somewhere else or whatever. And that was a concern because she wasn't going to help them buy the next house. And so she wouldn't earn the commission. But what she did do was, normally when a realtor gives another realtor a referral, pay a 25% referral fee. So if I'm a realtor in Arizona and I call up someone in Illinois and say, hey, I'm sending my clients, oh yeah, no problem, I'll do that. Well, she knew that was a typical practice. So she said, instead of paying me, can you pay my clients? And they said, well, okay, as long as I don't have to pay both of you. Like, no, don't pay me, just pay my clients. And then so that started to work. And then so she had the local realtors give that money to her clients. And then this started to grow momentum and with the neighboring states, and the program kind of took off. And then TrueView Lending, we got involved with CeaseMyLease, and now it's a national program in 41 states where they all reciprocate and they actually give that money to you, the tenant who's becoming a homeowner, and you're ceasing your lease. And then, again, they know that future business is probably coming from this. When you sell your house and buy your next house, you've got friends and family that you refer. So it is a good program for the realtors to get involved and give you a portion of their commission in the rent reimbursement program. So, and then again, there's seller concessions. We'll talk about that, but that's another fun part of this thing. So some of the challenges for today's home buyers are the recent inflation and the increase of interest rates and the increase in the home prices. Home prices have been going up, and that's affecting the marketplace. And so a lot of people are asking, should I buy now or should I wait? So that's a legitimate concern we want to kind of address here. So as we talk about inflation, you kind of hear that word a lot in the news, and this chart kind of shows you why. Because all the way back to 1990, so about 30 years ago, the inflation was a little bit higher, but it kind of came down, and it stayed pretty close to 2 or 3% for pretty much the last 30 years. There was a dip here in 2009 when the 2% mark, but look at just recently, since 2021, 22, it just skyrocketed. So that's why it's been in the news, and everyone's feeling it, and the prices of eggs, the price of gas, and the prices to buy things. I mean, a typical family of four is spending like $1,400 more per month now because of this inflation. So that's why it's affecting all of us, but it also affects the interest rates. And so, if we look at a chart over the last 30 years, actually this goes back 50 years of 30-year mortgage rates, you can see that this median line here, this is hanging out about 7.75, and that's kind of where we're at right now. But it's been as high as 18%, and it's been as low as in the high twos. And so, but look at this. Just recently, we've seen this spike up, and that's what we're feeling right now. Where for the last 10 years, we've had a nice low interest rate in the 3s and 4s and 5s, and but then recently it went down low and then kind of spiked up. So kind of similar to this right here. And this, there was articles back in the late 70s and early 80s, like we're never going to see interest rates below 14% again. It's just not going to happen. Start creeping up, and they're going to go up, all of a sudden, boom, they dropped all the way back down to 12. And then like, oh, they're going to drop down now. Like, no, they went back up. And then oh, they're going to keep going to 20%. Well, they never made that high, and then they kind of went down. But the one thing is, you can see is the rates do go up and down, and they change sometimes drastically and sometimes not so drastically. But we know that the rates are probably coming back down based on this chart. We just don't know when. But we talk to people about, if you wait for the rates to come down, that's what a lot of people's plan is. And that means more people are coming into the marketplace when the rates come down, which might be a little trickier to buy, which also pushes the sale prices up. So we're talking to people about buying now when the interest rates are higher. And then when everyone else is trying to buy because the interest rates come down, that's when you get to refinance. So you don't have to try and buy then. You're refinancing it. And so now you're just getting a nice lower payment, but you got into home ownership now. So that's one of the strategies. And then the other thing we do to combat that, the higher rates, is we know you're going to refinance in the next few years. So we've got a 5-year rate protection plan that will pay your lender fees to refinance. So you still have your taxes and your insurance, but your lender fees we're going to take care of because we know you're going to refinance. And we actually portfolio all of our own loans. And so we'll refinance you and get you that nice low interest rate. And we'll make sure you're aware of when it is and when it's beneficial for you. So sometimes we'll get rid of your mortgage insurance because you've got some equity in the property. It may be a good thing to pull some cash out and pay off some debt. It may be a good thing just to get that rate and term lower and have a nice low monthly payment. So all those opportunities are available to you once you own a home, and we refinance it when the rates become lower. So this is a chart of the rent over the last 30 years. So you can see back in the late 80s, we were down somewhere around 350, and they kind of crept up in about 400. This is the median price nationwide. And you can kind of see there's been some periods where they kind of stayed about the same and then go up and stayed about the same. Recently they've gone up pretty significantly, and the average rental price, more than tripled. And so it's kind of one of those things where, based on this chart, if you look at like what's happened, what do you think is going to happen over the next 10 years or 20 years? I mean, maybe it flattens out. Maybe we get a period like this where it actually went down for a couple years. But over the course of 10 years, it's pretty much any chunk in here, a 10-year period, they did increase. And so that's where it's kind of like, okay, well, my rent's probably going up over the next 10 years. And if that happens, am I comfortable with that as it increases? So that's something that you got to figure out for yourself. This is the median price of homes over the last 30 years. And so you can see actually this one's actually the last 70 years. So back in the in the 70s, when home prices were whatever $30,000, and you can see they've kind of been going up into the average price somewhere in the late 80s was about 100,000 nationwide, and they've kind of gone up. Look at this. This is where it actually went down here. This was in the recession, 2007, 8, 9, and then they did come back. So it took a few years, but they did come back, and now look at them, they kind of skyrocketed. So this is one of those things where based on this chart, you're like, okay, where do I think home prices are going? Are we going to see a little dip down? Maybe. Nobody really knows for sure. But even after the dip down, it's like, gosh, they keep kind of going up. And so that's one of the things where rent prices go up and home prices go up. So, if you could have owned a home back here, 30 years ago, and you bought that house for, whatever, $130,000, and now that thing's worth, I don't know, $500,000. That's one of those things where, if I can't go back in time, but I could decide today to do something. And what would happen if I did that today and the values went up and rent prices go up, but I got my payment locked in, and now you're paying down the mortgage. Here's the other thing, that monthly payment, that went down in how much you owed. And so let's say you only lived there for 10 years. So you bought it somewhere in the early 90s and sold it somewhere in the early 2000s, but all this money here is yours. So that, whatever that is, $60,000 or so, that's your money because the home appreciated and you paid down the mortgage. So when you leave, that's your money. Now, if you rented that same 10-year period, you leave, you don't walk away with anything. Maybe your security deposit if you took care of the place, but there's a good chance that you're not going to make anywhere near the amount that you could have made if you owned the house for 10 years. And even if you bought it right here in a 10-year period, like if you would have sold it in the next couple of years, you would have lost because the market tanked there. But after about 4 or 5 years and they kind of going upwards, it's still you're making money. So some things to consider there. So this is a program that we talked about if it's beneficial to buy a home as a cash buyer. So sometimes if you're a cash buyer, you could offer less on a property, and a seller may say, well, if you can close this thing in 10 days and you're paying cash, okay, we'll accept that offer. Or maybe if if the rates come back down, everyone jumps into home buying again, and there's lots of people writing offers, it's really good to be a cash buyer because you can say, look, I'm a cash buyer, I can close in 10 days. And you can beat out some other offers without having to go really high on the offer price. So maybe they're asking 300,000, and people are like, well, I'll go 310, I'll go 320. Look, I can cash. So New American Funding has a program. They portfolio all their own loans. So because they service their own loans, they're saying, well, we've got the money set aside for your loan. We'll just actually use it ahead of time and then cash, and then a few weeks for you to buy. Sometimes people have to sell a house first. It's a really good program if you have a house to sell. But if you're currently renting, it could come in as a handy thing, or maybe it's a non-issue, but it is something to talk to your program specialist about if your marketplace would be beneficial to be a cash buyer versus getting a loan. So because you're getting a loan with us, you could be a cash buyer. So seller concessions, I was going to tell you we're going to talk about this. So this is huge, and this is something, we're in this window right now where sellers know that they have to pay these seller concessions. So they're willing to do it, and they're willing to pay 2%, 3%, up to 6% on some programs they can pay. And we've seen 6% seller concessions, and it's a game changer. When you get the seller to pay that much, it's kind of like they're paying you to buy their house because they know that this is what it takes for someone to buy it right now. And the realtors are prepping them for that. So they're saying, here's the realtor commission I'm going to charge you when I'm selling your house. And this is typical in our market that you're going to pay 2, 3, 5% seller concessions. If we offer these concessions, someone's going to come choose to buy your house versus the other houses on the market. So seller concessions are happening a lot right now. And you can use these seller concessions to buy down your interest rate, which will lower your monthly payment. You can use it to pay your closing costs. So when there's multiple offers on that one property, it's a little tougher to get seller concessions. Now we still might be able to get 1 or 2, but to try and get, 6 or something like that. But if the property, has been on the market for a month, or maybe they've done a price reduction, it's really easy to get seller concessions. So that's something that our realtors in this market right now. And so here's kind of an example at $250,000 sale price. Now, a lot of times, if you do the online calculators, they'll just show you the principal interest, this number in yellow here. And that number's not the full picture because you've got your taxes and you've got your insurance and you've got your mortgage insurance. So you're like, oh, well, I'm comfortable at $1,600 a month. Well, actually the payments, over $2,000 a month when you add in your taxes, insurance, and mortgage insurance. So it's good to make sure you're looking at a calculator that has all those things in there to give you a realistic picture. And then in this example on 250,000, it shows, the closing costs of about 13.5. It shows a down payment just under 9,000. So it shows the total closing cost plus down payment at just over 22,000. Now, this is an FHA loan. In this program, you can get 6% seller concession. So you can get $15,000 that the sellers can pay to help you buy their house. If you get that $15,000, you're paying all of your closing costs, plus you can use some to buy down the interest rate. So now you're, instead of moving in with $22,000, you're coming in with less than $9,000 and probably getting a lower monthly payment because we can use the excess to buy down the interest rate. So that's what's huge about seller concessions right now, is it really helps paint a different picture, giving you the buying power. Do you need $9,000 to buy the house, or do you need $22,000 to buy the house? And if you're like, well, we're comfortable with these different payments, I can go up here and get seller concessions and, 360, where I'm still, instead of coming in with 30,000, I'm only coming in with, 12.6. So big difference if we can get those seller concessions, $25,000. So they said, well, so most people, when they look at this, like, oh, well, obviously it's going to be less expensive to buy the 376 than it would the 400. But if we said, you know what, sellers, instead of dropping to 376, sell it to me for 400, but give me 6% seller concessions. Give me that $24,000, and we're going to use that. Now look at this here. So this is the total out of pocket. So if I got the house for less money, I'm coming in with $32,000 for my down payment and closing costs. If I said push that price up and you give me that money in seller concessions, I'm coming in with about half as much money, only $16,800. And my monthly payment's not too much difference because I can use some of the money to buy down that interest rate. And here's a really fun thing. There's what's called a 2-1 buy down. So a 2-1 buy down, the first year it's bought down 2%. So let's say the going rate was 7.25. The first year it'd be down at 5.25. The second year would be 6.25. And then the third year, it'll be at 7.25. So if you bought the house for, $24,000 more, but we did the 2-1 buy down, you're still coming in with less money by about $12,000. And look at this, your monthly payment on that first year is actually a lot lower than what it would have been if you didn't do that. And then the second year, it's still lower. And then the third year, it actually goes up higher. But there's a good chance we're going to refinance in those next 3 years. So the payment will be lower. So it's a neat option to look at that 2-1 buy down, where we get the sellers to pay that for you. And then you've got less money out of pocket. You got a lower monthly payment, and it's kind of a win-win all the way around. Numbers work. You're like, okay, that makes sense. And the thing is, the sellers, they make the same amount of money. So if they sold it for 376 and paid no concessions, or they sold it for 400,000 and paid 6% concessions, 24,000, they're still netting that 376. So the sellers don't really care which way, it's just how to structure it and how do you get the most out of it. So your program specialist, your loan officer will talk to you about these different options and see what's best for you. But if you said, hey, I've got a lot of cash, I don't care about the monthly payment, I want to get this thing paid off quickly, you're probably going to go this route. And this route's going to be a better way to go because you're not really concerned about the down payment. But if you said, well, I'm not really concerned about the monthly payment, but my out of pocket, I just got to reduce that a bunch, then you're probably looking at this route. But if you said, I want a low monthly payment and I don't want a lot of money out of pocket, then now we're probably looking at this route. So lots of different options on putting this thing together, what's going to be best for your specific situation. And then let me kind of give you an overview of the journey of homeownership. So the initial meeting, you're going to talk with your program specialist or your loan officer, and they're going to talk to you about your goals and what it is you're looking for, how much you want for a monthly payment, how much money you have set aside for a down payment, what kind of sale price is in your marketplace that you think you're going to need to be qualified for, and then your timelines and when do you want to be in a home. And so they're going to kind of go through the strategies of how to structure that loan and the timelines based on what you're looking for. And then they're going to have you fill out an application, a financial application, and then upload your documentation. And then that's going to help determine which loan is going to be that information. And then they're going to get that pre-underwritten and with our pre-qual specialists. And then they're going to come back to you and go over the strategy and talk about next steps. They're going to talk to you about your approval and what that means, and then get you introduced to your CeaseMyLease realtor. And then you're going to meet your CeaseMyLease realtor, and it may be at the first property you guys see, or you may meet them at their office or at a coffee shop, but they're going to kind of go through and really understand what you're looking for and kind of your top 10 wish list, what you want in a property. And they're going to talk about your timelines and then kind of, start showing you some properties. And you're going to go out to the marketplace and visit some homes. You're going to make an offer, make multiple offers, negotiate, and I'll tell you what you're going to negotiate on next. And then you're finally going to get a contract accepted. And typically it's a 30-day close of escrow. If there's sellers in the property, they're going to move out. Sometimes if they're not there, it may be fun to negotiate a shorter time period, and that may be beneficial. But typically it's about 30 days. And in that 30 days, we're going to get the appraisal done. You're going to do the home inspection. You're going to work with the rest of the team on getting the rest of the documentation, everything we need to get to underwriting. So underwriting looks at it, gives us the approval, and then we go to funding, closing. You sign about 100 pieces of paper at closing, and that'll either be with the title company or closing attorney, depending on which state you're in, and then you become the happy homeowner. So that's the kind of the overview of the journey, and you can see how it's kind of a up and down journey. So it's not just an easy one. A lot of times there's going to be some hurdles we need to get through and some difficulties, but we're going to hold your hand. Your realtor's going to hold your hand and help you answer any questions along the way and make sure it's kind of a fun adventure for you and you're really informed about anything you have questions about. And so, a lot of times people do have questions about your program specialist is going to give you their view on, what you should be asking for as far as seller concessions, how that would be helpful in the contract, your buying power, what that payment means to you. And so they're going to have some say in the negotiations to kind of help you, but you're negotiate. So the things you're going to negotiate on, the first thing is the price. And so, you could offer a price. Let's say that they're asking $300,000. You could say, hey, we'd like to pay $295. And they may say, well, how about if we pay $298? And you could say, okay, or you could say, well, how about $297? And then they could say, okay, or they could say, well, how about $297.5? And so it could go back and forth. Either one of you could say yes, but the price is the first thing that you're going to negotiate on. Then there's the critical deadlines and close of escrow. So we talked about a close of escrow. If the house is vacant, maybe the sellers want to close faster. And if you wrote a quicker close of escrow date, that might be attractive for them because they've already moved out, they've gone to the new city or wherever. And but maybe they're living in that house and maybe they're waiting for their new home to be built. And so if you said, hey, we'll give you 60 days to close, they'd be like, oh, that's what we needed. The other people only giving us 30 days and we can't accept that because we don't want to move twice. So you're giving us 60 days. So sometimes a longer close of escrow or sometimes a shorter close of escrow could be nice. There's going to be inspection periods that are on there, and there's going to be timelines when money goes hard, different things like that. So there's going to be some critical dates that are in your contract. And each state is a little different on how their contracts put together, but your realtor is going to go through that. So you have it, tied to those dates. And then seller contributions, you're going to negotiate that. So when I say you, it's your realtor is going to help you. But that's where we want to try and get the max amount. Now, if there's multiple offers, we may not be able to get as much. But if there's not multiple offers, a lot of times you can get full seller contributions. And sometimes full means 3%, depending on the loan type. Sometimes it means 4%. Sometimes it means 6%. So depending on your loan type, your loan officer will let you know what that is. And then your realtor is going to help you negotiate those. And then the earnest money or due diligence money, that's money you could lose. So that money, you as a buyer would like that as little as possible, because you're saying, hey, sellers, here's my offer, and I'm giving you some earnest money. So take this property off the market. I'm earnestly interested in buying it. And here's my money. It gets sent to the title company or closing attorney, and that third party holds on to it, and it gets applied towards your closing costs. But it is money that's paid up front. And if you miss one of those dates or you back out of the contract at the last minute, you could lose that money. And so that's where sellers, they love it to be as high as possible, because they think, well, if you have a lot of earnest money, you're really committed and you're going to be buying my house. And you're thinking, well, I want this as small as possible, because if anything happens, I don't want to lose the money. So typically it ends up around 1%. So if you're buying a $300,000 house, it's about $3,000. But again, it's negotiated, and it can be, up or down from there. Sometimes it makes sense to give more earnest money because there's multiple offers. So sometimes that's a good strategy to offer more. But it is money that you could lose. So you got to be aware of that. And then the last thing you're going to negotiate is what's included in the sale. So maybe there's a specific refrigerator or a really neat clock that offsets the room, or that are specific to the property. You write those in. And sometimes your realtor will say, hey, this is actually, we want to keep this outside of the contract, so we'll put this other addendum together. But all those things are included. And so when you're negotiating, you may be going back and forth on all 5 of them, or maybe 3 of them. And so you might say, well, how about if we do this price and we do this earnest money, and we do this much seller back. We'd rather have been adjust and move back and forth. And you could be negotiating all 5 at once, or maybe just one. But those are things that your realtor, again, is going to kind of hold your hand and make sure you're comfortable with all that. And then this next one, don't let the media scare you. A lot of times right now, the message is, it's not good to buy a house. You're better off renting. And the biggest voice there is people that own rental properties, because there are corporations that are doing big apartment complexes, because they would love to make the money. Diana Olick, CNBC senior real estate correspondent, and every year what she said about owning a home. And so she's the person that's supposed to be in the know. But also, if you kind of bring doom and gloom to the marketplace, you get a lot more eyeballs looking at your program. And versus if you tell some fun stuff, maybe you don't get as much viewership. So that could be why. But if you look, if you bought a house back at is a $300,000 house, and back in October of 2015, what she said was, housing today, a bubble larger than 2006. Well, 2006 was scary, so people are like, holy cow, that's what she's talking about. So maybe I shouldn't buy this house for $300,000. Maybe we should wait, and maybe we should just see what happens. But if you did buy the house for $300,000, it went up 5.1%, and it was worth $315,000 because you didn't listen to Diana. And then so the next year is okay. Well, let's see what happens next year. And there's one person that bought the house for $300,000. They're pretty excited. The other person, well, let's just wait, because Diana said that it's not a good time. What did she say this year? Well, August 2016, we're in a new housing bubble. Shoot, maybe we should wait again. Maybe we shouldn't buy. Well, the people that bought for $300,000, they're pretty excited because their house went up another $17,000. So their house worth now $332,000. And the people that didn't buy, like, well, I don't know. She seemed wrong there, but let's just see. Should we wait? It seems like we should wait. And then so next year, homeownership doesn't build well study finds, like, ooh, okay, maybe we should wait again. Well, the people that bought, their house went up another $20,000. And every year this happens. 2018, it's better to rent than to buy in today's housing market. If you listen to her, you lost out again. And next year, the housing market is about to shift in a bad way for buyers. Well, it wasn't that bad because if you bought that house for 300,000, it still went up another 15 grand and now it's worth 380. And so on and on. This only goes through July 2021. Housing boom is over as new home sales fall to pandemic low. Well, if you didn't pay attention to that, you made another $80,000. But since then, you probably made another $150,000 on that property. So, you have over $350,000, $400,000 if you didn't listen to the media. But if you listen to the media, maybe you never bought. And now you could have bought a home for 300,000 about 8 years ago, where now that thing's probably worth about 700,000. So it's kind of like, what's going to happen in the future now? If you wait, is that house price going to go down like Diane Olick was suggesting? Or does that not really happen? And it actually keeps going up. So again, you can decide what's best for you. So, most financial experts think the rates will come down over the next year. Doesn't mean they will. And maybe it's the year after that, but we do know, we saw the chart, they do go up and down. So the big question is, should we wait? Like, does it make sense to wait for these rates to come down? And when the rates do come down, what happens to the market? Well, here's what happened is all these people that were kind of waiting, it's time. So everyone else is waiting, and now these rates come down. They're like, okay, well, I guess it's time to buy a house. Well, if everyone wants to buy a house, and let's say that house is worth, $300,000, if someone puts it like, oh, 300,000, I'll sell my house. If they've got one or two people wanting to buy that, maybe they're going to sell for 300,000 or right around there 295 or something. But when you have a lot of people wanting to buy that house, and now someone's like, hey, I'll take that home, and there's 30 other people I got to buy. How about if I buy 305? Well, I'll buy for 310. Well, I'll buy for 315. Like, and a bidding war is happening. So what happens to the price of homes when there's lots of people that want to buy that house? That's what we saw before, they go up. And so if there's 1 to 3 people wanting to buy the house like right now, or there's 15 or 30 people that want to buy that house, would you rather be in that market or this market? And when you have a lot of people wanting to buy a house, it's really tough to get seller concessions because they don't have to give them out because no one else is asking for them. And you're like, can I get them? Like, no, I got a bunch of other offers that don't ask for them, and they're actually wanting to pay me more. It's like, all right. So the other thing is, a lot of times sellers say, well, I know my house is only worth 300,000. When really it's only 300,000. All right, we'll pay the extra. We'll pay the extra. And so now people are actually buying the house for more than it's worth. And so again, like, that's not the best situation to be in. You'd rather do it in this window when you don't have to pay more. You can get seller concessions. There's a lot of things that happen. I'll show you a chart here about all the benefits. But kind of in summary, the rates right now, yeah, they're higher than we want. They've gone up a bunch lately, and they're still kind of going up. The number of available properties, we'd love it to be higher. There's actually less available than we want. There's a lot of people that don't want to sell their house because they're sitting on that nice low interest rate. And so they're like, yeah, we wanted to move up. We need more room, but to go up $100,000, we're sitting on a 3.5, and now we got to go to a 7.5. That's a big increase. So we'll stick it out here in our house. So the move up buyers aren't really in the marketplace like they were before. And inflation, cost of living, is that going up? Yeah, it's still kind of going up. We'd rather be going down, but it's still slightly going up. And the competition out there's still a lot. There's still 1 to 3 people wanting to buy that same house. We'd love for it to be less than 1 trying to buy that house, and then it's easy to negotiate a buyer's market. But we're not quite there yet, so it's still a little challenging. But here's the pros and cons of buying in today's market. So we talked about getting the seller paid closing costs with seller concessions, the seller paid rate buy down, just to buy the rate down, maybe a 2-1 buy down where they buy it down temporarily. Seller paid repairs. So when you go into a property and say, hey, these issues with the property, can you fix them, seller? Right now the seller will say, yeah, I can fix those, because they want to get it sold. When there's multiple offers, they might say, nah, we're not fixing anything. Do you want to still buy it, or should we sell it to the 5 people behind you that want to buy it and are not asking for repairs? So it's easier to get repairs done right now. You can still negotiate on price. We see it all the time. You can pay less than asking price right now. And you don't need to waive the appraisal when there's lots of competition. That's one of the things that's a strategy to win a house, is to waive the appraisal. You don't need to waive the inspection. You can say, hey, I'm going to get an inspection on the house and find out what's wrong with it and ask you to fix those things. But again, when there's lots of competition, People have to waive the inspections. You've got time to think about it. So it's not like make a decision today, you better write right now. It's gone tomorrow. That's not there right now. It's been there a couple of years ago. When the rates come back down, it'll probably be there again. But right now, it's not there. So, and there's no contingencies that on the contracts where people are saying, I'll pay $2,000 more than any offer you get, up to $50,000. So if I go in at 300,000, someone goes in at 305, my offer automatically goes 307, and I'm still in the driver's seat. And then someone else offers 310, mine goes 312. And so they do these contingencies where it'll go higher than anybody else offering it. So those are not in the marketplace right now, but they were there a couple of years ago. And again, when the rates come down. So now the bad thing is we do have higher interest rates right now. So that is the con, is the higher interest rates. But is that something that in the future, would you rather be trying to buy a house or just refinancing your house? And that's what we talk to people about, is like, yeah, the rates are high now. We'll refinance. When everyone else is trying to buy, you're going to be refinancing. You can take your time. Where everyone else is trying to buy at that time, that's not when you want to buy. You just want to refinance and get that nice low payment. So again, this talks about the interest rates going up and down, and that's just to remind you that they do go up and down, and they're going to come back down. We just don't know when that's going to be, but you can see over the history that they do go up and they do go down. And then CeaseMyLease, this is one of the things I wanted to show you. Let me see if I can pull this up here easily. So if I pull this over and do this. So this is the website. You guys can go to CeaseMyLease.com. But if you go down here to calculate my savings, and if you click on that, this is where, if you put in the sale price you're looking for, so let's say you're looking at a house that's whatever, 450. And so put the slider there, and then it calculates, okay, so this is the rent reimbursement that you get. But what if you ask for no seller contributions? The total amount you're going to get is $3,000 towards your closing costs. But what if you ask for 3%? So now you got 16,500. You got an additional 13,500 on top of your 3,000. What if you're doing an FHA loan where we can get 6% seller contributions? Now we've got $27,000 more that you're asking for. So that's the thing. It's like, but when you're going to write an offer on it, you can play around with it and say, well, what if we only got 3? Oh, cool, we got this. But what if the house price was only 415? Like, okay, and so you can play with it. This down here kind of tells you which type of loan you're doing and the max contribution. So if we're doing less than 10% down conventional, the max contributions is 3%, even though this says 15.4 because they got 3% plus the realtor's contribution, so it's a total of 15.4. I can't use it all. I can only use 12,450. But if I'm doing a VA loan or an FHA loan or a USDA loan, I can use all that money because these ones can go up to higher percentages. And then this is the sale price of the house you're buying, how much you're going to get reimbursed per month rentals. So that's in there. Again, if you go to the calculator, you can see how much that is based on the sale price you're buying. And then you can play around with the contributions just to see how much money you're going to get. So when you're getting ready to write an offer, it's a good tool to use to see, my realtor's saying I can only get 1% contribution. That means I'm getting 71, but what if I could get all 3 or 4? Like, oh, it's a big difference. I really need to ask for this because I don't have that extra money now. So, those are the things that you're going to want to know when you're out shopping. So hopefully that's helpful. And so that kind of concludes our presentation. I'll stick around for different questions if you guys have some afterward, and I'll just look at the chat bar. But thanks for hanging out with me, and hopefully you guys will be ceasing your lease soon, and we'll help you on your adventure. And keep an eye out for the email from your loan officer, your program specialist. They're going to be trying to contact you and talk about next steps. So thanks for hanging out. We'll see you.